The message traveled at the speed of light. It carried the voices of 7 billion people, their hopes, their fears, and their desperate need to be heard. It flew past Mars, past Jupiter, past the cold edges of the solar system, and into the endless black ocean of space. Nobody answered. Admiral Una stood at the tall windows of the United Earth Command Center. Outside, the city of Bizon stretched toward the sea, or what was left of it. The waters had risen 30 meters in the past decade. Whole neighborhoods now sat beneath the waves. She could still remember playing on those streets as a child. Now fish swam through her grandmother's kitchen. 73 years, she said quietly. A reflection stared back at her from the glass. Silver hair, tired eyes, the weight of an entire species on her shoulders. 73 years of calling out to the stars. And nothing. Lieutenant Tay stood behind her, holding a tablet filled with reports she did not want to read. He was young, barely 30, with the kind of hope in his eyes that she had lost long ago. "Admiral, the council is ready for you." She nodded and turned away from the window. There was work to do. There was always work to do. The council chamber was filled with the leaders of what remained of Earth's nations. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists. They all looked at her as she walked to the central platform. Their faces held the same expression: fear, exhaustion, the slow acceptance of death. "We have sent over 4,000 messages to every known frequency in the galaxy," Una began. Her voice was calm and steady. She had given this report many times before. "We have begged. We have offered friendship. We have asked only for help to survive. We have received no response." A murmur ran through the crowd. They knew this already, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. However, Una continued, "We have intercepted their communications. We know they are listening." She pressed a button on her console. A holographic display appeared above her, showing alien text that shifted into English as the translation software did its work. The words were cold. "Species 7712 continues aggressive self-destruction. Estimated extinction within 1 century. No intervention recommended. Let natural selection proceed." The chamber fell silent. Someone in the back row began to cry. Dr. Hannah stepped forward. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a mind that had cracked the codes of 12 alien languages. Her voice shook with anger as she spoke. "They call us species 7712, not humans. Not people. Just a number. They've watched us suffer for decades. They have the technology to save our planet, to clean our air, to heal our oceans. And they do nothing." She paused, her hands curling into fists. "We are entertainment to them. A nature documentary. They are waiting to see how we die." The president of the Eastern Coalition stood up. His name was June, old man who had spent his life fighting for peace. "Then what do we do? If they will not help us, how do we survive?" Una looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at everyone in the room. These were the leaders of humanity, the best they had, and they were all looking at her like lost children. "We survive the way we have always survived," she said. "We fight. We adapt. We refuse to die quietly." After the meeting, Una walked alone through the underground tunnels that connected the command center to the most secret place on Earth. Only 7 people knew about this place. Only 7 people knew what lay buried beneath the Antarctic ice. She passed through 17 security checkpoints. Each one scanned her face, her eyes, her heartbeat, and her thoughts. The technology here was not from Earth. It was much, much older. At the end of the tunnel, a massive door stood waiting. It was made of a metal that did not exist in any human database. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with a soft blue light. Commander Day was waiting for her. He was a tall man with a serious face and hands that had dug through ice and stone for 15 years. "Admiral," he said with a small bow, "we have made progress." The door opened slowly, revealing a chamber that took Yuna's breath away no matter how many times she saw it. The alien ship was enormous, stretching half a kilometer in every direction. Its surface was smooth and black, like the skin of some sleeping beast. 65 million years, they said as they walked inside. This ship crashed here before the dinosaurs died. Its builders were running from something. They buried their greatest creation here and never came back for it. They reached the heart of the ship. In the center of a vast room filled with strange machines, a sphere of pure darkness floated in the air. It was about the size of a basketball, but it felt bigger. It felt like it contained entire universes. Dr. Soong was there, studying the sphere with instruments that he had invented himself. He was an old man now, with white hair and shaking hands. But his mind was still sharp. "The Ember," he said, without looking up. "That is what they called it. Their final weapon. Their last hope. Will it work?" Yuna asked. Soong finally turned to face her. His eyes were filled with something she could not name. Fear? Hope? Perhaps both. It was designed to unlock the hidden potential of species that evolved through suffering. Species that survived against all odds. Species like us. He paused. Humans are the perfect match for this weapon. We have been fighting to survive since we first stood upright. Every war, every plague, every ice age. It is written in our DNA. What exactly does it do? Soong was quiet for a moment. It turns our pain into power, our grief into strength, our rage into something that can bend the laws of reality itself. Yuna stared at the dark sphere. It seemed to stare back at her. "The builders used it once," Soong continued. "They were pacifists. Gentle beings who had never known violence. But their enemy pushed them too far. So they activated the Ember. And they did not just defeat their enemy. They erased them. Every ship. Every planet. Every memory. Gone. As if they had never existed. What happened to the builders? The guilt destroyed them. They could not live with what they had done. So they buried the Ember here and let themselves fade away." Sung's voice dropped to a whisper. "That is why I am afraid, Admiral. Not because the Ember might not work for us, but because it might work too well." Yuna stood in silence for a long time. Above them, the stars continued to ignore humanity's cries. The Galactic Accord continued to watch and wait for extinction. And somewhere in the darkness, the Ember pulsed with patient power. She thought of Bizen, of her grandmother's kitchen beneath the waves, of the 19,000 colonists who had died on Mars because no one would help them. "Keep working," she said finally, "and pray we never have to use it." But even as she spoke the words, she knew. Somewhere deep in her heart, she knew they would have to use it. It was only a matter of time. The ice above them was 3 kilometers thick. The temperature was 40 degrees below zero. And yet, deep inside the ancient alien ship, Commander Day felt something warm. It was not physical warmth. It was something else. Something that lived in his chest and whispered promises of power. The closer he got to the Ember, the louder the whispers became. "The walls are still generating energy," said Engineer Mina. She walked beside him, her scanner making soft beeping sounds as it recorded data that should have been impossible. "This ship has been dead for 65 million years. But it is still alive, somehow." They nodded but did not speak. His mind was somewhere else. His mind was with his sister, Gina, and her 2 children. They had lived on the Mars colony. They had been happy there. And then the reactor had failed, and they had called for help. And the Galactic Accord had blocked every signal. 19,000 people had died waiting for help that never came. Gina and her children were 3 of them. Nay had not cried when he heard the news. He had simply gone back to work, digging deeper into the ice, searching for something that could make things right. Now, standing before the ember, he wondered if he had finally found it. "Tell me everything," he said to Dr. Sung. "I need to understand what this thing can do." Sung was sitting at a workstation covered in papers and holographic displays. He looked older every time Day saw him. The ember was taking something from him. Or maybe it was giving him something he did not want. "The species that built this ship called themselves the Kirin," Sung began. "They were ancient when the dinosaurs were young. They spread across 1,000 worlds. They created art, music, philosophy. They had never known war. What happened? Something found them. Something hungry. The records do not give it a name. They simply call it the Devourer. It consumed entire star systems. It fed on life itself. And it came for the Kirin." Mina stopped her scanning and listened. Even she, with her logical engineer's mind, could feel the weight of the story. "The Kirin tried everything," Sung continued. "Diplomacy, running, hiding, nothing worked. The Devourer was patient and endless. It hunted them for 10,000 years. And slowly, one world at a time, it ate them. So they built the ember," Day said. "Yes, their greatest scientists came together and created something that should not exist. A device that could tap into the deepest parts of consciousness. The parts we hide even from ourselves. Fear, anger, pain. The ember does not create these feelings. It releases them. It amplifies them. It turns them into a force that can reshape reality." Day looked at the dark sphere floating in its containment field. It was beautiful in a terrible way. Like a black hole made solid. Like a captured piece of the void. "The Kirin activated the ember as a last resort," Sung said. "They were pacifists. They had never hurt anyone. But when they finally let themselves feel rage, it was the rage of a species that had watched its children die for 10,000 years. He paused. The Devourer did not just die. It was erased. Every molecule, every quantum signature, every trace of its existence across all of time and space, gone, as if it had never been. "That sounds like exactly what we need," Mia said quietly. "No," Sung's voice was sharp. "You do not understand. The Kirin won, but the rage did not stop. It could not stop. They had released something they could not control. The guilt of what they had done, the horror of what they had become, it broke them. Within a generation, the entire species was gone. Not killed, just gone. They chose to end themselves rather than live with the memory." Silence filled the chamber. The ember pulsed softly, as if it was breathing. "Then why did they not destroy it?" They asked. "They could not. The ember is indestructible. So they did the next best thing. They flew to the most remote corner of the galaxy, crashed their ship on a young planet covered in ice, and buried it. They hoped no one would ever find it. They hoped it would sleep forever. But we found it," Mina said. "Yes, we found it. And now we have a choice." Sung stood up and walked to the containment field. His reflection appeared in the sphere's dark surface. "Humans are different from the Kirin. We are not pacifists. We have known violence since we first picked up rocks and sticks. War is in our blood. Survival is in our bones. You think we can control it," Day said. "I think we have a better chance than the Kirin did. But I also think the risk is enormous. If we activate the ember and cannot control the power it releases, we could destroy not just our enemies, but ourselves. Everything. The entire galaxy." Day closed his eyes. He saw Gina's face. He saw her children running through the Mars colony, laughing at some joke he could not remember. He saw them dying alone in the dark, while the stars watched and did nothing. "The galaxy does not care about us," he said softly. "The Accord has made that clear. They are waiting for us to die. They are comfortable, they are safe, and they have decided that we do not deserve to live." "So, what do you propose?" Soong asked. "I propose that we show them what happens when you ignore the cries of a species that refuses to die." Day opened his eyes. They burned with something that had been building for months, for years, for his entire life. "I propose that we wake the ember." 3 months later, Admiral Yuna received the news. The Accord had done something unforgivable. A human medical ship had been traveling to one of the outer colonies. It carried doctors, medicine, and equipment to treat a disease that was killing thousands. The ship had asked permission to pass through neutral space. The Accord had not just refused. They had destroyed it. 200 humans died in the cold vacuum of space. Doctors and nurses who had wanted only to help people. Lieutenant Tay delivered the report with shaking hands. They said we violated their borders. They said it was a warning. They said if we try again, they will do the same to Earth. Yuna sat in her chair and said nothing for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. Too calm. "Get me Commander Day." The call was brief. The decision was simple. "Begin activation protocols," Yuna said. "It is time." Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, the ember began to glow. After 65 million years of sleep, it was finally waking up. And this time, it had found a species that would not break under the weight of its own power. This time, it had found humanity. Dr. Soong watched the reading spike on his instruments. The energy levels were rising faster than he had predicted. The ember was eager. It had been waiting for this moment. "God help us," he whispered. But he knew that God was not coming. The stars had ignored humanity's prayers for 73 years. It was time to answer those prayers themselves, with fire. The Veltari were beautiful in a cold way. Their bodies were made of living crystal, tall and elegant, catching light and breaking it into rainbows. They had ruled the Galactic Accord for 10,000 years. They had never known fear. Until now. High Minister Krell stood before the Accord Council, his crystalline form glowing with agitation. The holographic display behind him showed something that should have been impossible. A human ship, moving faster than light. "They have discovered FTL travel," Krell announced. His voice rang like struck glass. "Our intelligence suggests they reverse-engineered it from an ancient vessel found on their planet. We do not know how. We do not know when. But they have done it." The council chamber erupted in noise. A dozen alien species talked over each other, their translators struggling to keep up. Fear filled the room like smoke. "This changes nothing," said Ambassador Varan of the Maokai, a species of six-limbed creatures covered in gray fur. "They are still primitive. They are still dying. We simply need to contain them until nature finishes what it started." "I agree," Krell said. "We will establish a blockade around their star system. Nothing goes in. Nothing comes out. They will starve. They will suffocate. And when they are gone, we will take their technology and add it to our own." No one objected. No one spoke for humanity. Species 7712 was not worth defending. The blockade was established within a month. 300 Accord ships surrounded the solar system, their weapons pointed at Earth like fingers of death. Trade ships were turned away. Aid was forbidden. Communications were jammed. On Earth, people began to die. Ambassador Yoon watched the chaos from her office in Geneva. She was 60 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. She had spent her entire life believing in diplomacy, believing that words could build bridges, believing that understanding could defeat hatred. Now she was beginning to wonder if she had been wrong. "The blockade has cut off our supply lines," her aide reported. A young woman named Sue, whose hands trembled as she read the numbers. The outer colonies are running out of food. Mars cannot grow enough to sustain itself. We have maybe 6 months before people start starving. And the Accord. They are watching. They seem to be enjoying it. Yoon closed her eyes. She had sent 347 diplomatic messages to the Accord in the past month. She had begged. She had pleaded. She had offered everything humanity had. The responses had been the same every time: silence or laughter. "Prepare my shuttle," she said. "I am going to make one last attempt." The Accord Council allowed her to speak only because they found her amusing. A small human woman standing before the assembled might of the galaxy. It was like watching an insect ask for mercy from a boot. Yoon walked to the center of the chamber. Her translator earpiece hummed softly, converting her words into 100 alien languages. She had prepared a speech. Carefully crafted words designed to appeal to reason and compassion. She threw the speech away. "I know you think we are nothing," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I know you have watched us struggle and decided we deserve to fail. But I want you to understand something. We did not choose this fight. We did not ask for enemies. All we ever wanted was the chance to live, to grow, to reach the stars and find friends among them." The Voltari High Minister made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Friends? With you? Your species cannot go a single generation without killing each other. You are violent. You are chaotic. You are a disease that we must contain before it spreads." "We are survivors," you replied. "Yes, we have fought. Yes, we have made terrible mistakes. But we have also loved. We have created beauty. We have reached beyond ourselves towards something better. Is that not worth protecting?" "No," Krell said simply. "It is not. Return to your world, human. Wait for the inevitable. We will harvest what remains when you are gone." Yoon stood very still. She had learned the Veltari language 40 years ago, hoping it would help her build peace. Now she removed her translator earpiece, crushed it beneath her heel, and spoke in perfect Veltari. "You will regret those words. Not because we are cruel, but because you have left us no choice." She turned and walked out of the chamber. The aliens watched her go in stunned silence. No human had ever spoken their language before. No human had ever looked at them with such fire in her eyes. 3 days later, the Mars colony sent a distress signal. A plague was spreading through the population. They needed medicine. They needed help. They needed someone to care. Commander Hyan took a medical ship through the blockade. He knew he would not survive. He knew the Accord would destroy him. But he went anyway, because there were children dying on Mars, and he could not stand by and do nothing. The Accord ships opened fire the moment he crossed the boundary line. His ship was torn apart in seconds. The medicine scattered across the void like snow. Commander Hyan died with his hand on the controls, still trying to reach Mars. Admiral Yuna received the news in her private quarters. She sat alone in the dark for an hour, not crying, not screaming, just sitting with the weight of it. Another death. Another friend gone. Another price paid for the crime of existing. Then she made a call. "Dr. Soong, begin the activation." Full power. Deep beneath the ice, the ember blazed to life. On Earth, something began to change. People felt it in their bones. A warmth spreading through their bodies. A clarity sharpening their minds. A rage coiling at the base of their spines like a sleeping dragon, finally opening its eyes. The stars had ignored their cries for 73 years. They had watched humanity suffer. They had laughed at humanity's pain. They had decided that humanity did not deserve to live. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Lieutenant Tay stood on the bridge of the command center, watching the energy readings climb higher and higher. His heart was beating fast. His hands were shaking, but not with fear, with anticipation. "Admiral," he said, "the Ember is fully active. The awakening has begun." Una stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the stars. Somewhere out there, the Accord was celebrating another victory. Another human ship destroyed. Another step toward extinction. They had no idea what was coming. "Good," she said. "Let them hear us now." The activation happened at exactly 6 in the morning. Earth Standard Time. Dr. Hannah was in her laboratory when she felt it. She had been reading intercepted Accord communications, the same cold messages she had translated 1,000 times before. Then something changed. The alien words were no longer just symbols on a screen. She could hear them, not through her ears, but through her mind. Every thought within light years, every whisper, every fear. She dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but she did not notice. Her brain was expanding. Her consciousness was stretching. She was becoming something new, and she was not alone. Across the planet, 8 billion people felt the Ember's gift flow through them. It was different for everyone. Pilots suddenly understood how to fold space without needing calculations. Engineers saw solutions to problems that had stumped humanity for centuries. Soldiers discovered they could move objects with their thoughts, project force with their minds, sense enemies before they attacked. But the greatest change was something harder to describe. A connection. A unity. 8 billion minds, still individual, but now part of something larger. A species that had spent its entire history fighting itself had finally become whole. In soul. A young medic named Bora felt tears running down her face. She could sense the pain of everyone around her. The grief. The fear. The decades of suffering that had built up inside them like pressure in a volcano. But she could also sense something else. Hope. For the first time in generations, humanity had hope. Admiral Una stood on the bridge of the Remembrance, humanity's first true warship. It had been built in 3 months using technology that should have taken centuries to develop. The Ember had shown them how. The Ember had given them the tools they needed. "Status report," she said. Lieutenant Tay closed his eyes. He no longer needed instruments to sense what was happening around them. His mind reached out through the void and touched the Accord blockade. 300 enemy ships. They have detected our energy spike and are moving to investigate. They think it is a malfunction. They are not afraid. Una smiled. It was not a kind smile. They will be. The Remembrance slid out of Earth's orbit like a ghost. Behind it came 100 more ships, each one crewed by humans whose minds were linked, whose thoughts were one. They moved in perfect formation, not because they had practiced, but because they could feel each other. They knew what their brothers and sisters would do before they did it. The Veltari commander of the blockade fleet was named Shen. He had never lost a battle. He had never faced an enemy he could not crush. When the human fleet appeared on his sensors, he felt only contempt. 100 ships, he said to his officers. Against 300. They have come to die. He ordered his fleet to attack. The battle lasted 4 minutes. The Accord ships opened fire with weapons that could crack planets. Energy beams and missiles and projectiles designed to tear through any defense. They expected the human fleet to crumble. Instead, the human ships vanished, not cloaked, not hidden, simply gone. One moment they were there. The next, they were somewhere else. Space itself bent around them, carrying them out of harm's way faster than thought. Then the humans struck back. Lieutenant Tay raised his hand. He did not need a weapon. He was the weapon. His mind reached across the void and pushed. A Veltari cruiser 3 kilometers away crumpled like paper, its crystal hull shattering into 1,000,000 pieces. Across the human fleet, others did the same. Pilots folded space to appear inside enemy formations. Soldiers projected kinetic force that tore through shields like they were made of smoke. Engineers rewrote the programming of Accord ships with a thought, turning their own weapons against them. Commander Shen watched his fleet die around him. He tried to retreat. He tried to call for help. But his communications were jammed, his engines were dead, and something was pressing against his mind like a cold hand. Dr. Hannah appeared on his view screen. She was not physically there. She did not need to be. Her consciousness had reached across space to deliver a message. "You watched us die for 73 years, she said. Her voice was calm, but there was fire beneath the words. You laughed at our suffering. You blocked our calls for help. You killed our doctors. You killed our children. You decided we were not worth saving. Please," Shen whispered. It was a word he had never spoken before. "Please, we surrender. We will leave. We will never return." "I know you will," Hannah replied. "But first, you will remember. You will remember what it felt like when we asked for help and you said no. You will remember every human who died because of your arrogance. You will carry that weight for the rest of your life." She touched his mind gently and gave him the memories. Not of battles, not of weapons, but of Gina dying on Mars with her children in her arms. Of Commander Hyan burning in the void because he wanted to save lives. Of millions of humans choking on poison air while the stars watched and did nothing. Shen screamed. The weight of it was too much. The guilt was crushing. "Go home," Hannah said. "Tell them what you saw. Tell them we are coming." The surviving Accord ships fled. They moved faster than they had ever moved before, running from something they did not understand. Running from a species that had been pushed too far. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Admiral Yuna watched them go. Her fleet had not lost a single ship. They had not lost a single life. The power of the Ember was beyond anything they had imagined, and that frightened her. "We could destroy them all," she said quietly. "We could burn every world they have. Erase them like they plan to erase us." Dr. Sung's voice came through the mental link. He was still on Earth, monitoring the Ember's energy levels. "We could." The Kirin did exactly that. And it destroyed them, I know. Yuna closed her eyes. She thought of the Veltari who had dismissed Ambassador Yoon. She thought of the cold words and the intercepted messages. She thought of 73 years of silence and cruelty. She wanted to burn them all. She wanted revenge. The rage inside her was vast and dark and hungry, but she also remembered what made humanity human. Not just the ability to fight, the ability to choose, the ability to be better. "Set course for the Accord capital," she said finally. "We are going to have a conversation. Not with weapons, with words. And if they will not listen?" Yuna opened her eyes. They glowed faintly with the Ember's power. "Then we will make them listen. But we will give them the chance we were never given. We will treat them with the mercy they did not show us. Because that is who we choose to be." The human fleet moved forward, not as conquerors, not as destroyers, but as something the galaxy had never seen before. Survivors who refused to become monsters. The Galactic Accord surrendered within 1 year. But it was not the battles that broke them. It was not the power that humanity had gained. It was something much simpler than it was mercy. Specialist Bora was 26 years old. She had been a medic before the awakening. She was still a medic after. The Ember had given her the ability to heal with a touch, to ease pain with a thought, to sense injury before it was spoken. But it had not changed who she was. When her unit captured a Veltari field hospital, she walked through the rows of wounded aliens and began treating them. The Veltari soldiers watched in confusion. Some were afraid. Some were angry. They had spent their lives being taught that humans were savage animals. Violent creatures who would destroy everything they touched. Now a human was kneeling beside them, healing their wounds, speaking soft words they could not understand but somehow felt. Why? One of them asked. His name was Tel, a young soldier who had lost his arm in the battle. Bora had regrown it in minutes, her ember-touched hands glowing with warm light. She thought about the question for a long time. Her family had died in Seoul during the blockade. The Accord had refused to let medicine through, and her parents had suffocated on air that the aliens could have cleaned in days. She had every reason to hate the Veltari, every right to want them to suffer as she had suffered. Because you cannot, she said finally. Because someone has to be the first to stop the cycle. Because if I hurt you, then you will hurt us, and we will hurt you again, and it will never end. She finished healing Tel's arm and sat back. My parents are dead because your people did nothing. If I do nothing now, what makes me different from you? Tel had no answer. None of the Veltari did. The footage of Bora healing her enemies spread across the galaxy faster than any weapon could have traveled. It was shared on 1 million worlds, translated into 1,000 languages, watched by billions of beings who had been told that humanity was a disease. And then more stories came. Commander Hyon's brother, Jin, took a fleet to the edge of Accord space. A star was collapsing there, threatening to destroy 3 inhabited worlds. The Accord had written those worlds off. They were small, unimportant, populated by species that did not matter. Jin's fleet evacuated 2 billion refugees. They worked for 3 weeks without rest, their ember-enhanced minds coordinating rescue efforts across light years. They saved everyone, every child, every elder, every being that the Accord had decided was not worth saving. When the star finally exploded, the human fleet was long gone, carrying their passengers to safety. The refugees looked at their rescuers with wonder and confusion. Why did you help us? They asked. We did nothing for you. Our government supported the blockade. We watched you die. Jin smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. We remember what it felt like to be ignored. We will not let anyone feel that way again. Dr. Sung shared the science behind the ember with species who had been denied advanced technology for centuries. Engineer Mina helped rebuild worlds that had been damaged by the Accord's wars. Lieutenant Tay established communication networks that allowed isolated species to finally connect with each other. Humanity spread across the galaxy, not as conquerors, as helpers, as healers, as the people who answered when others cried for help. The Veltari High Minister requested a private audience with Ambassador Yoon. He traveled to Earth alone, without guards, without weapons. It was the greatest display of vulnerability his species had ever shown. Yuan met him in the same chamber where she had once begged for mercy. The room looked different now. The walls were covered with art from 100 worlds, gifts from species that humanity had saved. Krell knelt before her. It was a gesture his people had never made to anyone. His crystal body trembled with emotion. We were wrong, he said. His voice was soft, broken. We feared what you might become. We saw your violence and your wars and your chaos, and we decided that you were a threat. We never imagined what you already were. Yoon looked at him for a long moment. She thought of all the years she had spent trying to build bridges, all the rejections, all the mockery, all the pain. Then she reached down and helped him to his feet. We are not special, she said. We are just stubborn. We refused to become what you expected us to be. You expected monsters, so we chose to be guardians. You expected destruction, so we chose to build. You expected revenge, so we chose mercy. How? Krell asked. After everything we did to you, how can you forgive us? Forgiveness is not about you, Yoon replied. It is about us. We cannot change what you did. We can only choose what we do next. And we have chosen to be better. The Galactic Accord dissolved within 5 years. In its place, a new alliance formed. The Assembly of Worlds. A council where every species had an equal voice. Where no one would be ignored. Where no one would be left to die. Admiral Yuna retired to a small home on the Korean coast, near where her grandmother's kitchen still lay beneath the waves. She spent her final years teaching children about the stars. They would climb onto her lap and ask her questions, their eyes wide with wonder. What is humanity's greatest achievement? They would ask Dot, she would smile and point at the sky, where human ships moved alongside ships from 1,000 other worlds. Where species that had once hated each other now worked together. Where the darkness between the stars had finally been filled with light. We made them listen, she would say. We showed them what we could do. But that was not the achievement. The achievement was what we did not do. We did not become them. We did not let our pain turn us into monsters. We chose to be something better. What about the Ember? The children would ask. Is it still working? Yuna would nod. The Ember had never stopped. Its power flowed through every human bloodline, passed from generation to generation. But it was no longer a weapon. It had become something else, a promise that no species would ever be ignored again. A promise that when someone cried out in the darkness, humanity would answer. A promise that the stars would no longer be cold and silent, because humanity remembered what it felt like to be alone. And they would never let anyone feel that way again. On a distant world, a young alien child looked up at the night sky. Her people were poor and struggling and forgotten by the great powers of the galaxy. She had grown up believing that no one cared about them, that they would live and die in obscurity. Then she saw a ship appear above her planet. A human ship bringing food and medicine and hope. She ran to meet them, her hearts pounding with excitement. The human who stepped off the ship was tall and smiling, with kind eyes that seemed to glow from within. "We heard you calling," the human said. "We are here to help." The child did not fully understand, but she felt something she had never felt before. Safety, belonging, the knowledge that someone, somewhere, cared about her existence. "Thank you," she whispered. The human knelt down to meet her eyes. "Thank yourself. You survived long enough for us to find you. That makes you strong. That makes you worthy. Never forget that." Above them, the stars shone bright. And they were no longer silent. They were filled with the voices of those who had chosen to listen.